Joker Folie A Deux, French for a madness of two. And like the title, I got 2 words to describe my thoughts on this movie. What happened? 2 years after the murder of Murray Franklin on live television, Todd films to return the sequel to Joker, Joker Folie A Deux. Joaquin Phoenix returns to his career-defining role as Arthur Fleck, aka Joker, where he is held in custody at Arkham State Hospital, or Arkham Asylum for all you comic book readers, awaiting trial for the crimes committed 2 years prior. During his stay at the hospital, and whilst he goes through his court hearing, he meets Harleen Quinzel, played by Lady Gaga, where they develop a strong relationship with each other, falling in love and navigating through their time at the hospital as well as through the trials and tribulations. Pun intended. So like I said, Folie A Deux is the sequel to the much acclaimed and well-received Joker. Released in 2019, as much as it annoyed me back then, even I can admit that the Joker was a big cultural phenomenon. Not only did it manage to be $1 billion at the box office, but it surprised audiences by setting a new standard for what comic book movies could achieve, and ended up being one of the most influential films of the past century, proving that they could be much more than just action-packed VFX-heavy blockbusters. So when the sequel was announced, right away expectations were really high. After the long rumor that Lady Gaga was cast as Harley Quinn for the movie was officially confirmed, as well as when the first few set photos came out, it looked like the film was on the right track. And with the film receiving a whopping 11-minute standing ovation after its screen debut at the Venice International Film Festival, it seemed like nothing would ever let this movie down. However, as time went on, as more and more people finally got the chance to see it, after its initial mixed first early critic reactions, much like the initial reception to the first one, the movie slowly started to become increasingly negative. The more and more people talked about it, the more negative was said about it. And this, even to my surprise, retroactively had a big impact on killing half the hype for this movie, unfortunately. So when the movie was finally released in theaters, you'd think the audience reception would be better, right? Nope, turns out audiences hated it just as much as the critics did. Not only did the Joker film unintentionally manage to achieve quite a feat in getting critics and general audiences for once to agree with one another, for example, giving this movie both 32% on Rotten Tomatoes, but CinemaScore also gave this movie a D-. And let it be known, I swear I'm not making this up, they rated this lower than what they rated Madam Web. Madam Web! You're telling me that a film that is a sequel to one of the most groundbreaking films, let alone a film about the villain character side of the story, is now being rated lower than Madam Web, which is now being currently considered or setting a new standard for being one of the, if not the worst superhero film of all time? Like, are you kidding me? This is insane! I'm about to go insane just talking about it. I mean, look, because of this movie, I haven't shaved in quite a while. I mean, my mustache and beard are just growing out like that insane. Happy minor no shave November, I guess. Now I must admit, guys, I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan when it comes to the first Joker film, so I was kind of expecting that this movie would more or less, be similar to its previous film. But after all this negative buzz that I've seen online, even I was asking myself, why? I mean, it's a sequel to the culture phenomenon that was the Joker. It can't be that bad. It couldn't be that bad, right? But, despite all the negative reception, ironically, I couldn't help but feel more curious about the movie. Pretty much nowadays, I try not to let negative reviews, let alone just any reviews for any movie from other people, sway my opinion before going to see one. But I still wanted to find out exactly why people were so angry and upset at this. So after completing my beginner's driver's course, which I'm now more confident to admit that I failed the first time at the driver's road test here in Canada, I finally got a chance to see the movie. And honestly, after seeing it, yeah, I now understand a bit more better why this movie was bashed on so much. But I do have my own things to say about it, so without further ado, let's finally talk about Joker Folie A Deux. This is gonna be a wild ride for sure. I'm not sure why the movie decides to open what is clearly a Looney Tunes cartoon or something out of a Hanna-Barbera series, but the movie opens with an animated sequence titled Me and My Shadow, where it's basically a retelling of the climactic ending of the last film, where Joker goes on the Murray Franklin talk show to murder him, but in this version, Joker's shadow violently overtakes his performance on live TV and abandons him on stage for the police to beat him up. And suffice to say, it was a very odd choice to open the movie with. I mean, the climax of the first Joker film was very dark and but moving ending. So to retell it in this fashion that risks reducing the impact of just how iconic that film was when reminding audiences about it, let alone at the very start of the film, like right off the bat, I was immediately put off by it. Which is pretty ironic considering that this opening scene was actually important and subtly hints at and alludes to something that happens much later in the film. So looking back, the fact that this scene exists makes it even more bothersome for me. But I didn't let that stop me, because I was hoping that at least the rest of the actual film would live up to the hype. Now before we go on, let me just be clear right here, right now. Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga as the titular Joker and Harley Quinn are fucking brilliant in this movie. If I could point out one of the two biggest strengths that this movie has, it's their acting ability and chemistry on screen. Whilst Todd Phillips' direction makes their portrayals very much differentiate and challenge the typical stereotypes of what we normally know from these characters in other media, in my opinion, they still truly understood their characters very well. And it shows that they kept in mind the very essence and core of the Joker and Harley Quinn characters. And in doing so, they were able to adapt that and also bring their own takes on their characters in the movie. There were a lot of moments throughout the film where I thought, yes, this is the kind of Joker and Harley Quinn portrayal I love from the comics, from the TV shows, from the games, and yes, this is how they would typically react in the situations that they were in. I'm showing some examples here briefly, but I'll get back to some of them in more detail later. On top of all that, the chemistry is just top-notch. For Joaquin Phoenix, even though I thought that his performance here was not as Oscar-worthy as it was in the first film, of course he continues to knock it out of the park with his career-defining role as Arthur Fleck, aka Joker. He continues to kinda expand on his take of the Joker character, continuing to successfully express and portray the mere complexities of his character, though nothing much relatively new this time around, to be honest. I gotta say, his performance is more comic accurate than the last one, in my opinion, which actually one of my biggest complaints about the previous film, and therefore I'm so glad he displays it more here, as this was what I was solely hoping and been looking for in this film and felt was sort of missing from the last one. Now as for Lady Gaga, I think we can all agree that her casting as Harley Quinn was one of the most insane and biggest castings for a comic book character that we've witnessed in a long time. I remember being absolutely mind blown that Lady Gaga, yes, the Lady Gaga, one of the most famous music artists of the last 2 decades and one of the biggest rising actors in the last few years, was casted as one of the most well-known DC characters of the last 3 decades, Harley Quinn. Nobody ever this high profile, I don't think, and shall I say news-breaking, has been casted for a character as big as Harley Quinn since probably Ben Affleck as Batman. Rest in peace, Batfleck. You had a good run. Plus, with the high bar set by the previous Joker film, and after Margot Robbie has done such an amazing job that she's almost become synonymous with the character, and of course Lady Gaga coming off as an Oscar winner from A Star Is Born, of course, there were a lot of high expectations that were set. The first set photo looks give us a good tease for her take on Harley Quinn, and after seeing the movie, I gotta say, she knocks it out of the park too! Like Joaquin Phoenix, she brings this complexity to her character, and who is referred to as Lee in the film. She not only portrays Harley's characteristics that we all know and love, such as her insanity, her dominant nature, her obsessive behavior, but also brings this kind of playfulness and mystery to her character, where otherwise her love for Joker sort of goes back and forth, and gets you questioning whether her love for Joker is real or not, which I'll get back to later in this video. As there's also her psychiatric background that's mentioned in the film, where she has this more mature performance to convey that. She portrays a much older version of Harley Quinn than what we're used to seeing, similar to Joaquin Phoenix's take on the Joker. However, she's still got most of Harley Quinn's movements down and aced all her mannerisms and her personality, her actions, everything. Though still, in my opinion, she's not as iconic as Margot Robbie. She was perfect.
Perfection.
Now back in the present day, we get a good clear look at Arthur's new life imprisoned and residing in Arkham Asylum. So Arthur and Lee meet each other for the first time, symbolizing the start of their madness for each other. Realizing their shared passion for smoking, she tells him that his actions in the first film inspired her. With Lee singing softly to Arthur the song Get Happy to entice him. And as you can see here, it is clearly working.
Get happy. Get ready for the judgment day.
Oh. I'm sorry, it sounds silly, but I feel like it was a missed opportunity there. Well, it works so well that it somehow gets Arthur to suddenly have the ability to fully sing himself. Or does he?
For once in my life, I have someone who needs me.
I don't know, but nonetheless they come in the form of full-on musical numbers, and this is where they start to become a regular occurrence throughout the film, whether you like it or not, depending on what you think of them, which I'll be talking about throughout the video, so don't worry. And as soon as I thought that, even after the weird animated prologue, the movie was having a strong and satisfying first act, this, unfortunately, is where I run into my first set of problems and frustrations with this movie. So one of the main ideas that Joker Folie A Deux was trying to suggest was that the reason for Arthur's actions in the first film is actually because he suffers from dissociative identity disorder, similar to Moon Knight from Marvel, which is what Arthur's lawyer, Marianne Stewart, played by Catherine Keener, plans to argue as largest defense in court. So yeah, about that animated sequence from earlier, yeah, this is one of the things that it alludes to. It alludes to the idea that Arthur's shadow is his alternate personality, the more violent one. So you're telling me that all of Arthur's actions in the last film are the result of his second, aka Joker personality, and that the Joker is two personalities. One is Arthur Fleck, and one is the Joker. Where is this coming from? All of Arthur's reactions are his alone, and his new Joker identity is the culmination of all the things that he went through up until that point. So why is this a random idea being thrown in there when it doesn't even line up with his character arc? I mean, wasn't the whole concept of the last film about the very start of his path to becoming the clown prince of crime we all know and love? How we see him, this man named Arthur Fleck, albeit with mental illness, literally becoming and embracing this new identity in life as the Joker, and that his dark, violent, murderous nature was always inside him waiting to be released after being broken by society? Plus, we've already established that Arthur suffers from neurological disorders, which already has mostly unrelated symptoms to what this film is trying to allude to. Okay, but I get that Arthur's lawyer was mainly putting this out there as an argument to use for the trial, so you could say I'm getting a bit nitpicky here, but yeah, for some reason it just doesn't make sense to me. Anyways, Joker and Harley Quinn are getting to know each other quite well in Arkham Asylum, with Arthur starting to fantasize about his relationship with Lee, and Lee sharing more details about her past with Arthur, including how she grew up in the same neighborhood as him. One night, they're both watching a screening of the 1953 film The Bandwagon starring Fred Astaire, and Lee suggests that they try to escape the madness of the asylum so they can be together. And uncharacteristically surprising that Arthur refuses here, saying that they'll just get caught. But proving she's just the perfect one to complement his madness with hers, she proceeds to start a building fire by lighting up a piano, allowing her and Arthur to sneak out together. As they escape, they begin singing and dancing together in the literal spotlight shown on them by the prison facility. Attempting to make a run for it, they climb over the asylum front gates where numerous reporters were eagerly waiting, though not long until the guards eventually catch up to them and throw Arthur back in the cell. Shortly afterwards, Arthur has a dream about him and Lee dancing together, but this time on the rooftops of Gotham City, facing a Hotel Arkham neon sign in the background, which is probably my most favorite musical sequence of the entire film, as it is a scene straight from the comics, and with Joker dancing with an enamored and spellbound Harley Quinn. Now, with all these dream or fantasy sequences, or just throughout the film in general, this leads to the film's second biggest strength, the way it was shot. Which I want to give a huge shout out to this, as well as the last film's director of cinematography, Lawrence Sher, who, thanks to all his direction in the camera work, the films look aesthetically pleasing and just visually stunning. I liked a lot of the shots used for this film. They were very well thought through, and you can take almost any frame or shots from this movie, and by itself, it already looks like a piece of visual art. Almost every shot means something in these Joker films, and yeah, that's one of the two of the film's biggest strengths here. So after the dream Arthur has, Lee visits Arthur and tells him that the asylum is separating the two, as they deem Arthur a bad influence on her. Bad influence. More like bad romance, am I right, guys? Okay, I'm sorry, I won't bring up that song again. But before she leaves, Joker and Harley proceed to get their freak on with each other for less than 20 seconds. It kind of gives me hope for myself, not gonna lie. Okay, but seriously, as a Batman fan, something about this makes me ecstatic that we finally get to see not only a live-action Joker and Harley Quinn duo movie, but a live-action, I guess, XXX rated scene between them before GTA 6. This is gonna be my rendition of the meme, I'm sorry. So, before Arthur begins his trial in court, an interview is organized between him and some TV personality show host named Patty Myers. And as Arthur is giving his interview, he suddenly falls into, yet again, a musical number, this time to the song Bewitched. And likewise to the first encounter, it has a similar effect on Lee. And I gotta say, this along with the previous ones I've shown, these are pretty much my favorite musical numbers of the entire movie. The musical numbers themselves are very well put together, from the set design, the lighting, the cinematography, to the performances by Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. And the movie's soundtrack of songs on their own are really good too. Like, listening to them by themselves are really worthwhile. But the main reason why I like these beginning musical numbers in particular is because these ones are where you actually can have a hard time deciphering whether they're in artist fantasies or take place in real life. For example, when Lee first meets Arthur and she was trying to get Arthur to sing with her, it was her way of attracting him, and this actually does happen in real life. There's the song For Once in My Life where Arthur sings that for once in his life, he doesn't feel so alone in the world anymore now that he's met Lee, which this one is leaning more towards being an artist fantasy. And finally, Bewitched, obviously, one of my favorites. Arthur sings to the live camera, which either does happen, and Lee sees this becoming more enamored with Arthur, or it actually doesn't happen, and that it's actually literally Arthur becoming spellbound, or falling for Lee's controlling spell over his mind. I'll get back to this in a bit, but this window is wide open for interpretation. So yeah, these musical numbers I really like, and they really add to or complement the scenes that they're in very effectively. And it helps to portray Joker and Harley's mental state and actions very well. The only problem is, these musical numbers are only in Arthur's fantasies from here on out, and Arthur has a dream fantasy nearly, every 10 minutes or so. Okay, we've reached about the halfway point of the movie where the trials are finally about to start. We're only halfway through the movie, ladies and gentlemen. So the trial finally begins with a much younger version of Harvey Dent, who comic book readers know as Two-Face, appears as the district attorney arguing against Joker, who arrives at the courthouse and is greeted by his fans and followers outside, including Lee, who is within the audience in the courtroom. Arthur's lawyer realizes that all his attention is on Lee, and during a court break and after a brief but passionate visit from Lee, the lawyer confronts Arthur and drops the bombshell reveal that Lee is not who she says she is, and that she has been lying to Arthur all along, including about her father and that she never burned down her apartment building, even revealing that Lee is a professional psychiatry student, and was voluntarily admitting herself into Arkham Asylum, and actually checked herself out, in contrast to when she told Joker about the asylum separating the two. Now, whilst I was going to take the time to appreciate this reveal, because at least this is one of those times that Todd Phillips actually acknowledges the comic book origins for Harley Quinn and adapts them pretty well for the film here by having Lee be a psychiatrist disguised as a fellow Arkham inmate. But it's so good at what she does that she makes Joker see her as though they're in a relationship together. As like I said, Lady Gaga's portrayal is so different and atypical from the usual Harley Quinn that we're used to seeing. Then we randomly get another musical number where Joker and Harley Quinn are hosts of their own fantasy talk show, which is a callback to the Murray Franklin show, I guess? Or it is to foreshadow Lee's betrayal to Joker's mind. But yeah, this comes randomly as after the serious scene just now, it just cuts to this more light-toned scene that felt it was just kind of just thrust in there before the next scene, so tonally it felt kind of out of place. But speaking of the next scene, Arthur back in the asylum later confronts Lee about this, where she admits that her manipulative lies, thanks to her psychiatry skills, were her way to get close to Arthur as her patient. But then she suddenly drops the mic and breaks the news that she is pregnant from their intimate time in his cell, and is living in Arthur's old apartment to start building a life for them.
I'm pregnant.
What?
I'm pregnant.
What?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it either, but make with that what you will, whether she's still lying or actually telling the truth.
I'm pregnant.
What?
I will say though that this scene ends with probably my most favorite shot of the entire film, and that is this shot where Lee draws a smile with her lipstick onto the glass wall in between them, and Arthur lines up his mouth with the smile. I really do wonder how many takes this took to get everything lined up exactly right, because this shot was amazing. For me, right up there with Joker drawing a smile with his blood at the end of the last film. Kind of poetic, isn't it?
The next day.
So another day, another court hearing begins, where this time they bring in Arthur's previous love interest, Sophie Drummond, played by Zazie Beetz, as a witness to talk about her history with Arthur, especially calling back to the last film. Which I'm glad to see her return. It kind of brings things between him and Arthur full circle, even for that short time that she was on screen. But as Sophie is talking to the court, out of nowhere we get another random musical number, specifically titled The Joker, with Joker in his mind viciously murders Harvey Dent and the judge while Lee, enjoying his massacre, sports a red smile with her lipstick. But yeah, after what is clearly a fantasy, it flashes back to reality, and after as Sophie's wrapping up talking to the court about the history of Arthur, having had enough of hearing what he doesn't want to hear, Arthur finally decides to start representing himself, to the cheers of his followers, but not before awkwardly kissing his lawyer goodbye, like he did earlier in the film, and dragged out of court. Okay, fellas, how many shippings does this make? He kissed Sophie, albeit in his imagination. He kissed Gary, that woman in the Murray Franklin show. He kissed his actual obsessive admirer in Arkham Asylum, fellow inmate Ricky. Obviously Harley Quinn, and now his lawyer. Bro be kissing so many random peeps that he's about to start his own harem with them. Or, no, that's just, maybe he's just becoming like Batman, just with a whole history of multiple love interests, I guess. Speaking of Gary, though, obviously the best character from the first film is now brought in to take a seat as a witness, this time with Arthur interrogating him himself in full Joker makeup and attire. And this, my friends, is my favorite scene of the entire film. Everything in this scene was just perfect. Well, other than Joker's over-exaggerated accent here, but all the way from Gary's entrance to Joker and Harley leaving the courtroom, it all just helps it to stand on its own for the rest of the film. And it's really all thanks to the acting performances of Joaquin Phoenix. And can we also give a massive shout out to Leigh Gill, who was the actor for Mr. Gary Puddles. He was phenomenal in this scene. And you can literally just see how shit scared he is of Arthur now that he's the Joker. But in the end, he still cares for his well-being and still wanted to see him as Arthur, not as Joker.
Arthur, don't do this to yourself. It isn't you.
You can just tell how much trauma Gary suffered through Arthur, and really makes you feel bad and sorry for the guy. Especially when he repeated what Arthur said to him after killing Randall from the first film.
Do you know what that feels like, Arthur? You were the only one at work who never made fun of me. You were the only one who was nice to me.
That hit me harder than I expected, and you can see and tell just how much Gary means to Arthur, as he's the only one that has actually moved Arthur almost to tears in the end at this point.
You got a flair for the dramatic. You are tugging at my heartstrings, little Gary.
I said no more questions, Your Honor.
Speaking of Joker, Joaquin Phoenix's performance here, in my opinion, is his strongest in this film. Not only is he the most emotional in this scene, but everything he says has power to it, much like he did in the Murray Franklin show.
I will no longer allow you or any of you to keep me down. I am free.
But okay, I'll be honest with you guys. The main reason for what makes me like his performance here, other than him dancing with Harley Quinn or the staircase scene and him carving that bloody smile at the end of the last film, is that this is probably his most comic accurate portrayal of Joker throughout the two films. Yes! This is what I fucking wanted! Oh man, this is what I've been solely hoping for Joaquin Phoenix's Joker for so long. Okay, well, not by his accent here, but the way he talks, his tone, his body motions, his stage presence he has in the courtroom, and just the power and control he has over his followers. Everything about his acting here spoke Joker to me. And I'm like Joker from the comics, the TV shows, the games, and I'm so glad I got to witness that. Everything about this scene is just gold, and what makes me, or make me appreciate the first Joker film even more, actually.
It isn't me. So you don't think this is me? Well, maybe you don't know who I really was.
But unfortunately for me, this elevation is short-lived, as right after Joker and Harley leave the courtroom, it cuts right into another random musical number. And I was like, really? Another one? We literally just had one a few minutes ago. Oh my god, the musical numbers are making me insane at this point. Okay, now at this point I can talk about the bad side about the musical numbers here. I think, in my opinion, half the musical numbers could have been cut out from this movie. You know, it could have been a lot better if for some more of the musical numbers, Joker and Harley just hummed or sang softly to each other like they did in the beginning. You can have some of them not as a musical number and execute it differently, and it would still get the same message, to be honest. But I think in doing this, it would still keep up with the theme of the movie, and it would also subtly but better show just how deranged and in their own world they both are, hence Folie A Deux. Yeah, since the talk show musical number, every time they went to a damn musical number, I couldn't help but laugh, because it was just becoming too overstuffed with musical numbers at this point. When they said this movie will be a musical, they really do mean an actual musical. I mean, nothing wrong with doing a musical number, but the thing that bothers me about this is that the way that Todd Phillips tries to execute this remains tonally inconsistent, whereas the non-musical scenes were more serious and appropriately like the previous film. But then most of the second half of the musical numbers are more lighter, positive tone, more happy, cheerful, fun, non-serious. I mean, literally, because like most of them take place in fantasy, so they don't fucking matter. They don't happen, so it literally doesn't add to a fucking thing to move the plot forward. And throughout the second half of the film, they also play in the middle of major scenes where it very much disrupts and interrupts what is supposed to be happening and what we're supposed to be focusing on, which, like I said, awkwardly changes the tone in between scenes, and which you shouldn't randomly do. I honestly thought they were just saying that this movie would be a musical with the assumption that there'll only be a few actual musical numbers, and the rest where the characters sing or hum in reference to other songs a little bit. But the crazy part is that they do encompass a big chunk of this movie. So yeah, I can understand why a lot of people were not a fan of this movie after watching it, or why many people were turned off or just left disinterested by the fact that the Joker sequel would be a musical in the first place. Why do I also feel like a lot of times this movie was made solely to boost Lady Gaga's music career? I mean, nothing wrong with that. I wish her all the best. I love Lady Gaga. But because I guess they took notes from her past music and public image, they thought, oh wow, she reminds me so much of Harley Quinn, which to be honest, it does here. There's a lot of resemblance. So they cast an actual Harley Quinn in Lady Gaga to play the character. Yeah, speaking of half the film taking place in fantasies, yeah, the world building wasn't that great. It was next to none compared to the first film. Like, in the first one, we explored different corners of Gotham City, from the subways to the alleyways, to the slumber houses to a theater hall, and of course Wayne Manor and the Murray Franklin studio. This one, we only have two settings, the Arkham Asylum and the Courtroom. Even though I am a sucker for self-contained stories, overall it felt like, in the end, nothing much happened, since half of the movie was all fantasies and the other was mainly between these two settings. So even though this film wasn't boring for me necessarily, I can see why it is for other people. Alright guys, we've reached the third act climax. Let's talk about the ending to this movie. Yep, that controversial ending. So upon returning to Arkham Asylum, Arthur was met by the security guards that have continuously bullied him throughout the film, who he berated in public at court. And in retaliation, the guards decide to deal with Arthur themselves by taking him to the showers, violently beating him, throwing him across the toilets and sinks, and is stripped down, which leads to the guards... Okay, I'm just gonna stop here, because at this point I'll just assume that people know where I'm heading with this, because I definitely cannot say this on YouTube, but yes, the guards do some very nasty things to Arthur, to say the least. Oh, if you thought this was controversial, this is just the tip of the iceberg, fellas. So remember the inmate named Ricky that Joker kissed that I mentioned a couple of minutes back? Well, yeah, the same security guards end up killing him for constantly being very provocatively supportive for Arthur, aka the Joker, during the time in Arkham Asylum, and Arthur witnesses this. And this is the moment that everything changes for Arthur. This, alongside the court case with Gary, has a profound impact on him, which caused him to do something in the final day of the trial the next day that pretty much made me drop dead inside in shocking disappointment.
There is no Joker.
No! Yeah, that was pretty much my exact reaction when I saw it, albeit not loud like that in the theaters though, because this was the scene where the movie officially lost me. Oh yeah, I feel the same way you're feeling, Harley. And not gonna lie, this was all of us leaving the theater after watching the movie. I mean, to be fair, by itself, I know how being done that can have extremely traumatizing effects on a person, especially for real-life victims out there. I'm not speaking for anybody here, nor do I want to delve too much longer in this already controversial topic, especially lately. I just know from my own knowledge of reading all the evil and sad news stories regarding this big issue in today's society, that I know how horrifying this can be. The thing is, I just don't know why. Just why? The movie had to take it to that extreme. I feel like the scene could have still worked if they just cut that prison scene and just use Gary's scene as justification for Arthur's denouncing for his Joker identity. Because we see how much seeing Gary this traumatized, the one guy that had been nice to him in the past, affects Arthur in that scene. So yeah, again, why? Why? Todd, why? But I guess going back to the animated sequence for the final time, it does prove that it was alluding to this ending, as not only the darker Joker half has left Arthur, and it's just Arthur Fleck left for the police to beat him up in the previous scene. So I guess in that aspect, I guess this is what Todd was trying to head towards or intended. Shortly after this, with the jury giving their guilty verdict to Arthur, the courtroom suddenly explodes, killing and injuring several people inside, including being the anticlimactic origin for Harvey Dent's half-scarred face. Amidst the chaos, two Joker followers help Arthur escape. However, still denounced of his Joker ways, Arthur this time, unlike the previous film, escapes them. To their surprise that their former leader is chickening out. You know what they say, once the leader falls, everything falls. I don't know who made that quote, but somebody official said it.
Gandhi said that.
I don't think he said that.
Yeah, he did.
Gandhi did not
Somebody
say,
like Gandhi said
take
that.
care of number one.
It was a really wise, it might have been Yoda.
Finally, Arthur gives us one last good of the good old nostalgia, and as he heads up to the staircase leading to his old apartment, literally going up memory lane to Harley, who is sitting at the top. Arthur still wanted to be with Harley, wonders about the runaway life that he still wants with her, to have together with her, but Lee rejects him and pretty much says,
All we had was the fantasy, and you gave up.
and leaves, singing one final song called That's Entertainment, which was played early in the film before saying farewell and goodbye to Arthur, as he is found and apprehended by police. And honestly, with how this film got here, Lady Gaga's exit was incredible. In my opinion, sort of mirroring Joker walking down the steps in the first film, except this time, she walks up in sadness rather than madness.
Goodbye, Arthur.
Oh, but we don't stop there, folks. This is the middle of the iceberg. Well, what's at the very bottom? Okay, so at this point, I've already broken most of the major spoilers, but this next one is probably the biggest spoiler that, if told, will have an everlasting impact on whether you see the movie or not, of which you cannot come back from. Like, seriously, this specific spoiler that I believe is fully responsible for the low ratings that this movie currently has. And if I'd known this beforehand, I don't think I would have ever gone to see the movie in the first place for this video to actually have been made. So for those who are still here at this point of the video, if you do not want this next part to be spoiled, whether you have seen it or not, I'm going to give you a few seconds right now to click away. Alright, for those still here, well, here it is. So Arthur, back in Arkham Asylum, no longer being the Joker, nobody to talk to, nobody to support him. One day while he is wandering around the prison, a fellow inmate comes up to him and tells him a joke. And what is the punchline, you ask?
Perfect, psychopath says. How about I get you what you fucking deserve?
Yes. The inmate kills Arthur Fleck, and later causes a bloody smile as Arthur bleeds to death, as he was never the real Joker, but it's alluded that the inmate that just killed him is.
What the fuck was
I am not kidding when I say that this is literally the hardest review I ever had to make for this channel's history thus far, because I am still in utter shock and angry of how bad that ending was. It wasn't even one of those subtle or left ambiguous and open to interpretation kind of endings. It was just bad. Oh my god, I never felt this agitated at a movie ending like this since Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. And that, in fact, was my very first ever and only Twilight film I've ever seen in theaters. Laugh at that what you will. So to already make me hate a franchise with just one film right off the bat is honestly really impressive. But beyond the points, this is by far, hands down, in my opinion, one of the worst endings to any comic book movie, or just any movie in general, to date. And I'm not exaggerating. If you were hyped to continue seeing Arthur Fleck's journey as the Joker, eventually becoming the clown prince of crime we all know and love, you will hate this ending. If you are excited to see how Joker and Harley Quinn's relationship grows and develops, you will hate this ending. If you are looking forward to see how Joker will eventually escape Arkham Asylum, you will hate this ending. If you are curious to find out how Arthur Fleck's actions will continue to set up the future of Gotham, including his potential interactions and how he relates to other villains like Two-Face here, you will hate this ending. Okay, well, if you're one of those people that pretty much only looks at this film for its commentary on mental health and political commentary on society, then maybe I could see you not hating this movie as much, because I thought those aspects were okay. And even if you're already not a fan of the whole film being a musical, then of course you will hate this ending! Basically, whatever category of audience you fall into, pretty much everyone will hate the ending to this movie. Yeah, so I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, Todd Phillips? Are you actually intentionally trying to get your audience to hate your movie? What's the point of all this pissing us off just to make us like Jokers? Or was it because you saw criticisms and even positive receptions of the last film, and such as, this is not the Joker I love from the comics, he's supposed to kill more people. Or, this first one was great, I can't wait to see how he escapes from Arkham Asylum and works to turn Gotham into a complete inhabitable hub run by criminals, led by him, the clown prince of crime, and then decided, I'm not going to address any of that, how about I just do my own thing, something out of the ordinary and out of expectations so that you guys don't have to ask me anymore. And gave us this BS of an ending. It was like not only all of Arthur Fleck's or Joker's actions or even fantasies throughout the movie were for absolutely nothing, but also everything that has happened between these two Joker films was completely pointless now. Because literally everything that we witnessed was for naught, and that everything that happened during these two films doesn't even fucking matter anymore. They had all this build-up, all this potential for Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, and even Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn to be so much more than just these two films. But then it all went down the drain when he is stabbed and dies, no longer getting the chance to eventually become the arch-enemy of Batman that he grows up to be. All of this for absolutely nothing. All is for naught, nothing fucking matters, and my time is fucking wasted.
My disappointment is immeasurable. And my day is ruined.
Which probably means this video itself was a fucking waste of time, but hey, if you made it far into the video, however long it ends up being, good for you. I mean, I implore you for going on this otherwise painful journey with me. What am I doing with my life? I think for those who have watched it, we can all agree that Joker Folie A Deux was certainly one of the most triggering films, not only within the superhero genre, but to date as well. I really have no idea what Todd Phillips was thinking when making this film, nor do I know what he even intended for the audience with this film. Why do I also feel like this movie was a byproduct of both Todd Phillips' usual direction for the first film, but then was collaborating with another musical director for all the musical parts, like Damien Chazelle, for example, and both just couldn't decide what the tone of the movie was going to be, so the tone ended up being completely imbalanced and inconsistent. But there are some things about Joker Folie A Deux that do help to redeem it a little bit, and make it less bad than what plenty of people are saying. I really loved and adored the acting performances, the way the movie was shot, as well as some of the music tracks, but not all, which for me at least helped to elevate the movie as a whole. I can't speak for everybody, but I hope that these aspects will grow on most audiences. But even the film's actual good points aren't entirely enough to lift this movie up from all the rest of the bad things that drag this movie down terribly. But hey, is it the worst comic book movie in the world? Far from it. There are other much worse examples. But yeah, combined with the overuse of musical numbers, which again, half of them could have been cut down, as they sometimes delve attention away from what's more important in my opinion, creating this imbalance and inconsistency as well. Pretty much half of the film relied on fantasies between Joker and Harley Quinn, which after a while becomes pretty shallow. It's just stuck between only 2 locations throughout the film's second half, so you honestly feel that nothing really happens. Some choices of direction, the narrative story overall, and the film's overall execution was just awful. And yeah, that ending for sure just ruined everything, and I wouldn't be surprised if it won't age well for years to come. Oh yeah, and there was also footage from the trailer that ended up not being in the movie, like Harley in the elevator with makeup, or Joker and Harley dancing outside the courthouse. If you were expecting those, then I'm so sorry. I was originally gonna give this movie a 5 out of 10, but with how much this movie has turned me into pretty much similar to like a Joker, and how insane I'm getting with my mustache and beard and hair growing out and everything, I'm gonna have to give this movie a 4.5 out of 10 and a C-. Man, when literally Emergency Awesome hates it, Grace Randolph hates it, John Campia hates it, The Flick Pick hates it, Heavy Spoilers hates it, 3C Films hates it, every single big movie talk YouTuber I've seen despise this movie, you just know something about this movie is terribly wrong. And man, you know it's also bad, like Justice was when it pissed off Christopher Nolan, and even Bradley Cooper doesn't even want to come back to produce it. Well, I guess it makes complete sense, and isn't really surprising that Todd Phillips is now stepping down from DC, moving away from it, and that he shot down the possibility of a Joker 3, and let alone a Lady Gaga Harley Quinn spin-off. Yeah, that's not happening anymore, and I'm not surprised. Guys, thank you so much for watching me go through a lot of emotions in this video. I honestly need a break right now, and yeah, I need to change my appearance. I mean, I know it's no shave November typically, but I really can't handle my mustache and beard anymore. I need to shave it off. But if you like what you've seen here, then feel free to punch the subscribe button in the face, and feel free to drop a like on this video. Hammer that like button, it'll help it a ton. And feel free to just like, comment on this video, and I can't do it anymore. And please share this video around to as many people as you can, whether it's your family, your friends, your dad, your mom, your sister, your brother, I don't care. Anybody that is a fan of movies or has heard of this movie or has seen it. And yeah, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. And yeah, I'm just done here, folks. I can't do this anymore. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it nonetheless, and I'll see you for the next video. Happy late Halloween. I know this is coming very late, but yeah, we're almost setting up for Christmas, but yeah, just happy late Halloween, and hope you guys had a fun one this year. I certainly didn't really have a fun one, but I hope you guys did. And anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really can't do this anymore. Bye, guys.